Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over all the details for Live Letter 60. Just 9 more and we can have a nice one. This was the patch 5.4 part 1 live letter with the special guest, the UI designer whose name escapes me but will be available later in the text that we're actually watching on the screen right here, or reading or whatever. Sorry, I've been up since 2:30 a.m. and it's 7 a.m. right now. I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit. It was beefy. It was a lot more beefy than I expected it to be. Normally, we're pretty good with predictions, and slowly but surely I had to start adding predictions on because they just started naming more and more things that they were updating in 5.4. So let's get into that, because it is going to be a long one. To my surprise, they didn't talk at all about Yoshi P's role as producer on 16. I thought he might want to address his dual role. They did release an interview that was posted on the Lodestone, where maybe he considers that enough of addressing what it's like to be a producer on 2 games at once. But maybe he'll mention it sometime in the future. Anyway, we'll just scroll through. They started with going over what's going to be in the upcoming patch 5.35. That's coming on Tuesday, October 13th. So we're going to have some videos on that. The Bosnian Southern Front, the Resistance weapon upgrades, the Sky Steel tool upgrades, as well as additional housing wards, which is the real PvP of the patch. Because of that, the patch won't be going live early. It will go live on exactly the scheduled time. So those of you looking to get a house, good luck. Anyway, with that, they went on to reiterating a bunch of details about the Bosnian Southern Front. None of this is new. A lot of these slides were lifted right from the live letter number 59. So there really isn't too much to talk about when it comes to this one. There were a few additional comments and a few additional clarifications about some Bosnia stuff, especially going towards patch 5.4. So there's not really much to add here. I'm just scrolling through the text to see if there was anything that they actually added that was in any way different from what we heard in live letter 59. They showed us the Bosnian Finder again. They went over critical engagements, the entering of them. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything really new here. The lottery system, the resistance weapon upgrades, the story that's going to be in there, the fact that you can use it to level from level 71 to 80. This is all pretty much stuff that we already knew. They did say that stats are going to be fixed no matter what gear you have equipped, since you are going to be set to item level 430. Hopefully in regards to skill speed and spell speed, that doesn't screw certain jobs from feeling good in there, but given the large scale of content, shouldn't be that big a deal no matter what. So that's all that's going to matter. They showed off a few additional armor sets as well for Bosnia. They showed off 2 sets in live letter 59, and then they showed off 4 sets here, so I think we've seen all the sets at this point. But yeah, so they showed this was the tank set right here. Yoshi P, I like your face. So yeah, the assassin's tank, essentially, a little bit of a zoom in on the face right here. The other 3 sets, they didn't talk about what roles they belong to, but they did specifically say that this was going to be the tank set. And then they showed just some of the other ones. If I had to guess, this is probably Machinist, Bard, Dancer for this set right here. This set is probably scouting. In fact, there's a dagger right there. It's hard to tell, though. That dagger could just be part of the appearance, because you generally have 2 daggers as a scouting job. But the fact that it's even there makes me think scouting doesn't, I wouldn't shy away from it. And this, I'm not sure. Kind of. I'd have to compare it to the other set up here. It looks like the side of the skirt isn't as long as either of the 2 other sets. We know we saw Black Mage last month, and then they didn't say what the role was for the other one, so I'm not sure. It could be the healer sets. I guess with the side thing, it's what's the word? It's if there's anything, I need to remember what the caster set looked like from last time, and I unfortunately don't. But those are my guesses based on what we saw. And that was it for just reminding us that 5.35 is coming Tuesday. Then we get into the juiciness, the absolute juiciness of the patch 5.4 stuff. Because as soon as this title dropped, I went, oh, that's a hell of a name drop. Futures Rewritten is patch 5.4's English name. I think a new future is what the direct text relates to from Japanese to English. That's got some weight behind it. And that's going to be early December. That's for anyone who's wondering about them being on or off schedule with COVID delays. If they actually are back on schedule, early December is the exact predictions that we have been having based on them saying they're back on schedule. So it seems they are keeping to that. December 1st would be the 16-week mark, which would be the perfect schedule, but they have occasionally done 17-week schedules in the past, so December 8th wouldn't be all too surprising either. What we do know is it's not mid-December, so it's not going to be the 15th. So one of those 2 days, get your calendars ready, because obviously we're going to have all the usual even-numbered patch droppings, and just, we might have to wait a little bit closer. Wait till we get another live letter confirmation and really call in that off time. We're on track to make release in time. They did say that 5.41 won't be until January, which matches our 5.31 schedule of 4 weeks. And we were wondering why. What bug fixes could they possibly need? And that's when they started telling us the rest of what's in patch 5.4. And we started saying, okay, I understand what's going on here. New main scenario quests, they didn't say much. They just showed us a screenshot of Asgard and of Vanu standing next to Amric and Lucia. That's... all right, I'm already confused because that's nowhere near where I expected any sort of teaser to go for this. So yeah, that was interesting. The new dungeon is Matoya's Relict, which is going to be trust system compatible, of course, and is going to be our singular dungeon. There's just a quick picture right here of it. You see some staircase stairs, some books making a staircase. You see a tunnel off to the right. You see this little dial right here, and what looks to be a boss arena, of course, right there as well. I'm excited. Matoya and Y'shtola is something I've been waiting for them to explore more. Obviously, wasn't really super possible during Shadowbringers thus far. But Matoya, a lot of people forget Y'shtola is actually dying slowly. She has been since Heavensward. And I've long suspected Matoya is going to play a role, potentially a life-threatening one, in order to preserve Y'shtola's life at some point. So anytime she comes back into the story and there's anything to do with her, I always wonder if they're going to start leaning back into that plot point. So that's why I'm always excited whenever Matoya comes up into the plot, and I'm hoping that they'll start moving her more into the main scenario role. Given the name Futures Rewritten, I wouldn't be surprised to see her be a major role, or to even be passing that role on to Y'shtola officially on the source. So then they just go over, it's got a very fantasy feel. New Chronicle quest. Dude, they said new Chronicles of a New Era. I said, show me that emerald weapon. Show me that emerald weapon. They showed me that emerald weapon. Everyone was like, he looks so small. I'm like, guys, he's in the background. He's not even activated. It's not this big. That's not how perception works. But that's emerald weapon in the back. And that's all I needed to see. Predictions were ruby weapon, then emerald weapon, then diamond weapon, because there's 2 siblings that have the same colored hair. And I assume that diamond weapon would take both of them to pilot it. And I'm still on track for that prediction at this point. So, now, that's not to say that they couldn't switch it up again with what they did in 5.3, but we'll see. We'll see. It's still in line with my predictions. But yeah, Extreme Emerald Weapon and Emerald Weapon Normal. They mention the mobile suits again, but they don't say anything about their use. But we'll see. We'll see what exactly happens there. The new raid is Eden's Promise. We didn't get any screenshots of it other than just one quick one of coffee biscuits. Good old coffee biscuits. Well, coffee and biscuits, most likely. Now, an interesting thing, you're going to have to complete the patch 5.3 main scenario quests in order to do this. And they even specifically state that, so these 2 will be the focus on this story, but the MSQ is tied into it, a rewritten future. Now, obviously, that kind of makes sense because the first had its entire future rewritten throughout the course of Shadowbringers, and as did the source. So the outcome of everything that happened in 5.3 is going to take center stage, it seems, and that includes our events over on the source. It makes sense also given some of the past events in 5.2 and 5.3, specifically in this quest line, so they may just want to make sure for continuity's sake that you have that done. So, that's going to be that. Looking forward to that. Of course, no teasers on any of the fights. I'm still in the boat that it's going to be an Ultimecia equivalent at some point, but we shall see. Job adjustments. They briefly touched on Monk. They didn't go too much into detail. They just reconfirmed what they said in the last live letter, that Grease Lightning will indeed be changed into a trait, And they elaborated on that and said that you will no longer need to stack Greased Lightning, in case that was confusing for anyone last time. And to be fair, it was. We were asking that question a lot from Live Letter 59, which is, of course, going to lead to a bunch of changes for the other abilities. You know, the way Tornado Kick works obviously can't be quite the same. Maybe it'll stack to 1 and not to 4, and you just need to activate it. Maybe it's just a trait that's permanently active all the time without any sort of activation. Still question marks. They said they'll cover that more in patch 5.4, part 2's live letter, which will be closer to patch 5.4's date. They're trying to keep the busy feeling for it, but it's a ninja level rework, so expect it to at least play significantly enough different. Hopefully it's better. Just because it's different doesn't mean it'll be better. I'm hoping it will be because, you know, I love Monk, but I just don't like it right now. Blue Mage is going to be getting updates. This caught me by surprise. I didn't think this would happen in an even-numbered patch. Level cap will be raised from 60 to 70. New spells will be added. New blue exclusive gear will be added. New things in their book. New duties in their book. More importantly, level 70 Blue Mage unlocks a few potentials. The first one, of course, there's obviously going to be an achievement for beating Omega 4, 8, and 12. They did it with the previous raid tiers. No doubt there'll be one. That's not the big thing to think about. Ultimate becomes the conversation in this case. Blue Cob and Blue Woo, if you will. Blue Cob, entirely reasonable to expect it'll be doable. There's no shenanigans that need to happen there, any limit break, you know, tomfoolery that needs to go on. Blue Woo is a little different. You would need 4 different limit break equivalents. Diamondback would cover the tank one, but for the healer, single target DPS, and AoE DPS, it's expected that you would probably need something to take care of those. Now, they did introduce the ethereal mimicry last time, and some people have suggested that is their avenue to add limit breaks to each of the individual blue roles. The DPS one would still need to give you a choice, but I am kind of hoping it goes that route so that Blue Woo will be one of the possible things to work on. As for the rewards, who knows? I'm still hoping for a Blue Mage version of Palace of the Dead or Heaven on High. Maybe we'll get that. Blue Mage and Eureka? Probably not, I'm going to assume. So, yeah, but I'm looking forward to that. That's already 2 different raid progs I have to do now. 5.4 Savage, 5.4 1 or 5 for this. And we're not even done yet, because then we move into the Save the Queen update. Resistance weapon upgrades and the Delubrum Reginae, which I believe is the Queen's Sanctum, which is much easier to remember to say, which is their new Baldessian Arsenal equivalent that was available for Eureka. This is the BA equivalent of the Bosgen Front. It will have 2 difficulties, 24-man, which will be no role requirements for matching. It'll be really easy to complete for the sake of the story. And then Savage, which is probably more like Baldessian Arsenal back in Eureka, where, you know, you can't resurrect through traditional means, only through specific lost actions that you'll be able to use. The mechanics are probably a bit more tightly tuned for that, just more like the original Baldessian Arsenal. Now, what's actually interesting to note, there's 2 very interesting things in this reveal for this slide. The first one is there's no mention of another zone for Bosja. Now, it's possible the Southern Front will just open up with a new portion of its map, but there's no mention of that. So there's some question marks about if it's just going to be the Delubrum Reginae, or if there will be a Eastern Front, a Western Front, or a Northern Front. Given what we know about the geography of Bosja, it was curious to see how that was actually going to pan out, but that's still a question mark. We don't know if that's 100% the case. More importantly, I think, is the number of people that can enter normal and savage. 24 plus 48 equals 72. That's basic math. 72 people is the maximum number of people that can be in a Bosgen Southern Front instance. That means that if 48 players were to pre-coordinate via Discord, like they do with Baldessian Arsenal, get into an instance, enter it, and claim that Bosgen area for themselves, it would in no way impede the other 24 people from participating in the content, essentially allowing people to pick up and go with the normal mode, or organize the more strenuous Savage mode through traditional means. So they've solved kind of the portal problem that existed with Baldessian, where people needed to compete in order to enter. Instead, it's just going to be a matter of the preformed groups for the 48-man, which they say you must form parties before entering, versus the Pug version. So I'm really glad they seem to have actually come up with a decent solution for the portal problem that we had with the original Baldessian Arsenal. So with that, we just need to know if there's going to be any more areas, or if they're sticking to 1, which I kind of hope they aren't, but it also makes sense given it's a leveling zone as well. We shall see. They also do have a little bit more commentary about it right now, and they do confirm this is in 5.45. They did not confirm which update Blue Mage will be in, and I'm really hoping Blue Mage is 5.41. So that way we don't have Blue Mage prog overlapping with Queen Sanctum prog. Fingers crossed, but there's no telling at this point. Also, crafter updates. They're going to adjust some of the less frequently used actions, and they're going to add more crafting conditions for the future expert recipes, so the 5.4 recipes. Gatherers are also getting an update. The collectible and ethereal reduction systems have been revamped. Most importantly, the collectible glove has been removed. This is actually akin to a change they made to crafters in the previous patch, where if an item is a collectible item, that's just how it's classified. That way you can't accidentally get a useless item that is only meant to be done with collectibles and has no crafting recipes associated with it, basically removing that sort of trap of forgetting your collectible glove altogether by just making certain materials collectible exclusive. It worked well for crafting. It should work well for gathering. I don't see why it wouldn't. Item wear will also be removed. Now, this specifically means that when you're doing your collectibles for gathering, there's normally a wear and tear where you only have a certain number of actions to actually do anything. And when the item actually hits its 0 grade, then that's it. You know, you failed the collectible, essentially. That's no longer a part of the system. Instead, we have this fancy new UI, which covers the value of collectibility from your collectibility actions, gives you some percentages on some of the other things that you have a choice of doing, and gives you your collectibility range based on the action you're going to be taking. It's more focused on the number of actions it actually takes you to get to the collectibility you want versus having an item wear and then also having to dig at the number of potential attempts that you had. This should actually be a pretty substantial improvement to collectibles if it's done at least in some way that it's in somewhat the same way that it's being described to us. He says it might look like something similar to what we had in 1.0. It doesn't. I was there. If you want 1.0 gathering, go to the gold saucer. It's there. I don't want it back, please. Some other things as well. They also said that the gathering and perception ratings will have a greater impact on collectability, which might mean that your gathering melds are a little bit more meaningful going forward. Also, ethereal reduction, because they're changing the way collectability is calculated, they need to adjust the way ethereal reduction results are also calculated. That kind of just makes sense. On top of that, and this is a big one, sometimes it's just the simple things, elevation of gathering points will be discernible on the map in 5.4. Again, the simple things. Something we feel like we should have had years ago. We have it now. Not going to complain because it definitely needed to happen. And then we also have changes to fisheye. Now, this is interesting because people who have done big fishing should look at this and go, hey, I did that shit when it was hard. Well, yeah, that's what you're going to be saying. Fisheyes is now going to be adjusted. It's not going to be required to catch fish. It is instead an ability that will ignore the time requirement for catching fish. Now, people question, does that mean like how long you have to sit waiting for them to pull on the fishing rod, or does it mean the time of day for something like big fish? The exact comment says, we're going to change the effect so you can ignore the time requirement for catching fish. This might be making big fish fishing too easy, so we're a little careful with how far we're going. So those of you who have had issues finishing your big fishing or your big fish log should have an easier time with the new fish eyes. It is a massive GP dump, so that's probably what the intention is, to give fishing a mass GP dump when it comes to looking for those fish at the specific times. So that is going to be a big thing for that. Now, on top of that, they also, never mind, I'm skipping ahead too much because they decided to hop around here. Asgard restoration first. The fourth phase of restoration will begin in 5.4, I'd assume 5, or 5.41, I'd assume, sorry. This is the final one. That surprises me because we still have the 0.5 patch. So my predictions for Asgard housing were 6.1. I still hold that prediction. But predictions for earlier than 6.0 are going to start cropping up. I expect them to, because this is ending earlier than most of us expected it to end. So I'm curious to see how this pans out. Because we know that so I remember them saying that when we finished with restoration, they wanted to have like seasonal events there, or they wanted to have like, I don't know, they mentioned like events, like major events taking place there once it was completed in the firmament. And I'm wondering if that's going to take center stage in 0.5x as opposed to an actual restoration effort. That's the only question mark that I really have about this. More funnily, whichever crafting class has the greatest contributions is going to get a statue for that server. I wonder what that's going to look like, or how servers are going to decide that, because some people may want to actually still compete for their rankings, which they're following the same rules as 5.3x with, where it's going to be same title, different achievement. So if you have the title and you don't want a new achievement, you don't need to worry about it. But there is going to, of course, be Skybuilder rankings reopening, but this is the final ranking. This is your last chance to actually get any sort of the ranking achievements. So that's the big thing that surprised me. That's why I was surprised they weren't doing one in 0.5. Maybe it's something completely different, but it still has crafting and gathering in 0.5. Who knows? Let's see. Sky Steel tools will be upgraded. No surprise there. There's nothing. Also, Unreal, they made mention of real quick. They said Shiva seemed too difficult. Shiva isn't too difficult. Now, I will say the item level cap of 430 has made for some, or is it 435? Whatever. Has made for some hilarious enraged pulls in the Party Finder. I will say that much. That being said, I mean, it's still just Shiva, so I wonder, he says he's not going to tell us who it's going to be. But if Shiva was too difficult, there's not really many options to go down. So I will say the Party Finder for Unreal is interesting. So I don't know. It's going to be, I think it's still going to be Titan. I'm still holding out that it's going to be Titan. What isn't mentioned is the reward structure. Are we going to keep the exact same rewards for the next trial? Like the exact ones with no additions we have now? Is there going to be like a cycle of any kind for the rewards? None of that was covered. Maybe it'll be covered in the part 2 live letter. I have a feeling all the rewards are going to stay the same, and they'll add a couple of things for those who have been extra lucky, but that's just speculation. So take it with a grain of salt. Sky Steel tools are getting updated. Whatever. Unreal trial, new trial will be added. They didn't tell us. They're adding a roulette equivalent for Shadowbringers for treasure hunts. So there's going to be a new League Yacht dungeon. If you have done the Stormblood one and you recognize the Shifting Altars, this is the Shifting Altars equivalent that is going to be available for treasure hunting. That's cool. I have the achievement for the current one. I'm probably going to work towards my 20 completions achievement for this one as well, which means a lot of treasure maps in my future, more content, and a lot more money, hopefully. Update to ocean fishing. There's going to be new routes, additional missions or objectives, which will reward you bonus points, and they're going to be adding an anti-grief system to ocean fishing as well. A really common thing that happened when ocean fishing first released is people would leave after the first or sometimes even the second destination in a route. They would leave because they could theoretically get another queue in and potentially have another chance in that 2-hour window to get their mount or their minion or their title or whatever achievement it was they were working on. They're going to now make it so that you cannot re-embark after abandoning a voyage. So you can only go out on one voyage per 2-hour window. So whatever happens on that voyage, you just have to accept it, and there's not going to be a way around that. So no more join and leave, join and leave, join and leave. So that's that. I appreciate that because I saw it happen a lot across the times that I was doing it. I think it's just, just take what you get. Just if the game's gonna screw you, just take your dickings on the chin. All right, giggity, and just accept it and just wait 2 more hours and do it again later. You'll be all right. Updates to Triple Triad. Now this surprised me. Rules and UI will be revamped for ease of play. New rules and tournaments will be added. New rule set to battle opponents with a deck of randomly chosen cards and periodically held tournaments. They mentioned the tournaments taking 8 players, giving them random cards and throwing them into a tournament style, I guess, elimination. It's interesting to see them try to revive a little bit of interest in Triple Triad outside of just card collecting. I wonder if any of these new rules will allow finally for us to use more than one 4- or 5-star card. It's one of the biggest reasons I kind of just don't pay attention to Triple Triad anymore, because it's really not fun to only get that singular choice. Even though you can do some interesting decks with the 3-star cards, it just doesn't feel good to be limited to that singular 4- or 5-star card. So, curious to see how that'll pan out. I'm glad to see them supporting it. Now we just need Chocobo Racing to get some new tracks, and we'll be good. Let's see. They're going to be adding a quick match or a Tonpusen option for Mahjong, so it'll be quicker matches altogether. They're also going to be doing some UI adjustments that I don't understand because I don't play Mahjong. Dora indicator can be changed to show the tile before Dora instead, and the discard pile indicates whether a tile is Sumokiri, which means discarded immediately after it was drawn, or not. Just some updates to Mahjong to make it a little bit easier to jump into, a little bit quicker to play, and to make it a little bit clearer for people who are still either playing it and knowledgeable or are learning it for the first time. Then they have, what was that? They have miscellaneous updates, new violin instruments will be added to the perform function, new system for affixing multiple materia. It's actually hilarious. So we heard about this, I think, in a blog post the other day, or an interview, where apparently they're going to make it so that you can ask the game to like do your melds. Like if you say, oh, I want to meld direct hit, like a direct hit 7 materia on, don't, just keep trying over and over again until it's successful. That's what they're adding. So essentially, if you want to give it 200 attempts at affixing that materia and it takes 200 attempts, then you can do them all, without having to constantly click in the menus over and over again. They clarified it's a little bit more hilarious than that, because it does all the attempts until, so it does every attempt with whatever materia you have until successful, and it does them all in an instant. So let's say you were to use this feature, the quick meld, and you wanted to try this over meld, this fifth meld for this grade 7 direct hit materia, right? And let's say it would have failed 160 times and been successful on the 161st time. When you click the quick meld, all 161 attempts happen in an instant, and it just distracts the materia from the failed attempts from your inventory. Which is great from a speed perspective and hilarious from a I don't want to know how many I just died perspective. It's actually an incredible time saver. As somebody who does overmelds for every even numbered patch, I appreciate this a lot. I also am going to appreciate watching it all disappear so quickly, because it's definitely going to happen. They're also adding a feature where you can link quests in the chat window. This is so you can ask, oh guys, I don't know where to go for this quest. Can somebody help me out? Now, of course, that raises concerns about spoilers, but they already covered that. If you've not completed whatever quest it is, it will actually read as question mark, question mark, question mark in the chat. So that way it doesn't spoil anyone who's not up to that point in the story yet. So I'm glad they thought about that. Now, they did have some PS5 news, but not a PS5 version of the game yet. The PS4 Pro version of 14 will be available to play on PS5, so it's not like an account conversion. You literally are just logging into the PS4 version with your brand new PS5 so you can make use of the hardware, for example. They specifically mentioned that the hardware, specifically the SSD, I'd assume, is going to ensure quicker loading times. So the Pro settings in the system configuration will be available. I don't see any reason to not use them for me in particular, but this is not confirmation of a PS5 version. They said, please wait for news like that at a later date. So they also found out Yoshi P and Foxglon did not get their PS5 pre-orders because they did not get chosen in the lottery, and that Yoshi P needs to borrow somebody's, he needs a fan to donate a PS5 to him. He's asking very, very nicely. Also, we got a little bit of a tease at this, which was gone over in the second half. You guys might notice that there are 3 players on mounts in a dungeon. Now, at first, this made it sound like we were just going to be able to use dungeons in mounts in dungeons, and that was not the case, actually. The big thing that it means is the new Explorer mode, because for the second half, they brought on the lead UI designer, Kei Odagiri, and he answered a bunch of questions. He talked a little bit about his history with the company and some of his inspirations for UI, games like Persona 5 or Ghost of Tsushima. Goes over some of the things they've worked on in the past, like Mahjong, the Duty Finder, Wondrous Tales, the Fox Hollows, which doesn't have a fox on it, just needed to make sure it was accurate. Some of the anniversary events that we've had and their hilarity that we've had in the past. And then they went over Explorer mode. So basically, all the 5.x dungeons and new dungeons that are added in the future, including the 5.4 dungeon, are going to have this new Explorer mode where you can just go in, mount up, walk around. All the mobs will be cleared out. All the obstacles will be cleared out. You can put down training dummies in order to execute actions, so you can use them for things like G-pose. This will be good for specifically people doing G-pose, but this is a real creative feature that I'm already thinking about how to incorporate into my content, because one thing that's always really nice when you're designing content for YouTube, for example, is the scenery that you want to use for this. And dungeons often nowadays mean you got to go into the dungeon, you got to clear it out, you need to get it done within a certain period of time. There's a little bit more time that goes into it, and it's a little bit it's not as free of a thing to do. And so for things like verses, I tend to just go around and find random striking dummies and random zones for me to, get just a different scenery for different things, because there's not very many other options. I love this from that perspective. I hope to see people doing things like machinimas or more uniquely styled videos. You know, I'm looking forward to see if Denmo does anything with this new feature, for example, or Mary, or any of the people who make content that is very much more on the creative side of things. So I hope that that's what this leads to, and that's why I think this is a good feature. I do. They did say it's really buggy right now in testing, and they're getting a lot of in-team bug reports about it. So hopefully they can iron it out and get it out for 5.4. Get it out in an okay state, I suppose. They did show, of course, you know, you can use limit breaks. LB 1, 2, and 3 are all available for whatever screenshots or different types of videos that you want to do. So I'm really happy with this. They went over some of his functions in the UI team, and I would like to go over some of the individual things they spoke about in terms of UI features, but almost every answer boiled down to, it's possible if we did this, but because of this, we probably can't do it. Almost every answer boiled down to that, like showing, you know, magical versus physical damage in game. Apparently, it's a bit of an issue in regards to the back end, the game servers sending the information and the outgoing packets. They said that if the data was saved locally on a PC from the received packets, that it'd actually be really easy to do, which actually explains why we can use programs like ACT in order to read that information. They didn't talk about maybe adding it as something that's specifically noted in the battle logs, but he did explain why doing it from their end is actually a little bit tougher in the testing it has to go through, because it's more likely to actually break things when they have to send that information with the packets while reading the packets. It's all sorts of there's all sorts of things that go into it, and that ended up being a pretty common theme. Is that it's one thing to just like display that if you were just to receive information and cause it to appear client side. But another thing is to send the information via the packets while reading the other packets that it needs. That seems to be the one recurring theme when they were going through most of the UI elements. UI scaling, they said that was just, you know, we could, but then people are just going to keep asking for more and more and more. And it's just never going to end. So they kind of like it the way it is, but they do want to work on better resolutions for the UI altogether. So that is something that maybe we can expect in the future. Minions, showing minions that you've already obtained when buying them apparently isn't possible. Let me choose many and throw them all away at once. They said, again, that's probably not going to be possible, but they did tease something new. They are indeed working on new themes for the UI. People have been asking this ever since the light theme was added, and now they're working on something that looks more like a traditional theme, stuff that you see in like the Palace of the Dead user interface and stuff like that. You can even see kind of the like 16-bit icon here in the top left for the selected one. And I really like this. It's a little bright in my opinion, but that's why I don't like light mode, but the I guess it's muted enough to the point where this is probably the theme I'll use when it officially releases, because I kind of like the old school Final Fantasy color scheme they've got going on. We also got a tease of a new Duty Finder feature, a new Duty Finder UI update for patch 5.4, and that it's going to display the job in need in the Duty Finder itself without having to actually click and like look at it here. So this is a nice little thing to get added on to the user interface for job in need or role in need for the specific duties instead of having to click on them all individually. So I am a fan of that. The little icons of the dot feeling to it. And then it goes back to, you know, how can I do this or can we do that? And it's almost every single one just boils down to that same style of answer. One of them is like, we're running out of ideas for new G-pose features, which isn't along those same lines, but I don't really have much at all to add to that. It was a pretty interesting section. It set off a lot of discussions about the way the game handles data and the user interface in my Twitch chat when it was going live, but at the same time, there's only so much we could really extrapolate because of all the answers being the way that they were. So we'll take the good news where we can, and the we can't do it news the same way that we always have. A little grimace going, there's that reason again, and move on with our lives like we tend to do most of the time. There is something else, FanFest. I predicted this. I think most of us predicted this. EU FanFest is canceled. I mean, we all expected it at this point. Everyone's like, it's possible, it's possible, it's possible. It was never going to happen. They finally outright confirmed all 3 of the physical FanFests have been canceled. Now, physical FanFests have been canceled. However, they did start to give us an idea of what we can expect, which, to be fair, I expected anyway, for what we're getting instead. February 2021 will have a ton of new announcements regarding Fortnite. They were like, oh, who knows what we'll talk about in February when we have this event. I'm like, now because it's after when all 3 of the FanFests would have taken place initially, we can maybe assume this will compile every FanFest's reveal into a single announcement. They have not confirmed that. That is speculation, but it is a heavy speculation based on the timing of it being after the time all 3 of the previous FanFests would have taken place. It is also going to be followed by a 14-hour live broadcast, which will probably be things like panels and Yoshi P walks and bringing on all sorts of guests and things like that. And that is going to be a fun little time. They are also considering shifting to a digital FanFest in May of 2021. Now, I'd like to point out that May, under normal circumstances, would be when we get a live letter detailing major aspects about the new expansion. That's historically when we've gotten it. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the case for this, if this is that equivalent but in a digital FanFest format, or if this is a separate drip feed similar to what we would have had with our FanFest normally being in November and then eventually towards the end with the January EU one, and now it's instead a February into a May drip of information. They were not clear about that, so please speculate. Please look forward to it. Hi. The FanFest is going to be a digital global thing, and it's going to be 2 days in the digital form online. So that's what we're looking forward to for next year in regards to expansion. I'm sorry, they don't say expansion. They specifically say, I don't know what new info it might be, but it's going to be Final Fantasy XIV related. Guys, come on, Yoshi. Like, just say it. We know what it's for. We know. It's just, whatever. Anyway, they're adding a new feature to the Lodestone, the Community Finder. Now, this is another feature that looks like it'll be probably more popular in Japan than it is in the West. That's true of a lot of features they add when it comes to the Lodestone, the Fellowship Finder. All those stuff they just function way better in the East than they do in the West. We just don't do it. We just don't use it. We're just not efficient. All right. So it's a new Lodestone feature where players can recruit and find in-game communities via the Lodestone. You can register your free company or link shell, add your own tags, and you can also open the website from within the launcher/game. So that is another thing to mention. Now, I assume that it just launches a web page, not like actually in-game, but who knows. Post a free company recruitment listing on the Community Finder during the campaign to receive in-game items to share with members. So yeah, you can see, I see like the glow sticks, for example. I see some of the fireworks and whatnot. So if you do participate in it, when it launches for the first 2 weeks, then you do actually gain some additional benefits as well. They reminded everyone to vote for Final Fantasy XIV for the Golden Joystick Awards. Now, best gaming, so these are all 3 pretty funny. Best gaming community, I'd say on the surface, that's a pretty reasonable. Excuse me, I did not choke on my words there. It's a pretty reasonable thing. Generally, if you were to consider the overall structure of Final Fantasy XIV, whenever we talk about issues or events that happen, it's normally a very small portion of the community that's actually getting involved. The majority of it is not as much as some of us who are like longtime vets like to make it out to be like this is toxic or that's toxic or people are like this. We're generally speaking of a very small percentage of the community. So that one is very reasonable, as much as some of us might go LOL best community by the way. It's realistically we're in a bubble that doesn't take into account a lot of the normal people who play Final Fantasy XIV, which I would say even still has a really good community. Best game expansion. That's not for Shadowbringers. That's for patch 5.3. I just think the Golden Joysticks just wanted that category in there. And they're like, do we have any expansions for this? And they're like, I mean, 14 had a patch. It's not an expansion, but fuck it. Throw it on the list. Because it's not even Shadowbringers. It's only patch 5.3 that's up for game expansion. And 5.3 is not the only patch that came out this year. So I think it's funny. And the Still Playing Award. That's a really weird name for an award. So, I don't really know how to feel about that one. Yoshi P is actually really excited for the Still Playing Award, apparently. Cool. All right. I'm Not Dead Yet Award, the Not Wild Star Award, whatever you want to call it. He's just grateful for being nominated. They're selling a $300 print collection of some different prints. They're $300. they're $300, well, they're 30,000 yen, but they're like $300, and there's 2 of them, and yeah, I'm not buying it. Anyway, to click on this one, these are just some other merchandise that's available. Job-based acrylic stands, apparently even Blue Mage has one. You can see it right there. The Fat Cat plush, the mouse pad, the Paisa Patissier plush with the little chef's hat. Yeah, and then that's just it. There's the Paisa. I'm just gonna call him the Paisa chef because I can't say the other word. And that was it. That was it for the producer live letter. I don't see any sort of corrections here at the bottom. So that's going to cover patch 5.4. A lot of little quality of life things, updates to previous functions like Blue Mage, Ocean Fishing, Triple Triad. A lot of trying to bring some of the game's more, I guess, its breadth of features more into the modern era because they haven't been updated in so long. They almost feel archaic compared to the way they were designed way back when. And Ocean Fishing, we need to see how those new routes, how the new achievements, new rewards will actually function. They didn't go into too much detail on that. But I'm excited because I get Savage Prog in 5.4, I get Blue Mage Prog, and I get the new Queen Sanctum, which is what I'm going to call it because I'm never going to remember how to pronounce the other way. So Queen Sanctum is what it's going to be called to me. Queen Sanctum Savage, yeah. So it's going to be a hell of a patch. It's going to be packed to the brim for things for everyone to do of all different skill groups, whether you're doing treasure hunts with your friends or progging Savage and Blue Mage stuff for the first time. Anyway, with that, I'm going to wrap up this recording and get back to my usual live stream because as you can tell, I'm a little parched from almost choking on my words a couple of times. Thank you, everyone, for putting up with this on the Twitch side of things, since I'm just recording this live on Twitch. YouTube, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. You guys know the drill. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday for Bastia. Well, I'll see you on the Monday Q&A, but I'll also see you on Tuesday for Bastia. Be on the lookout for some videos on that. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. And until then, take care.